When you think about getting deeper into your yoga practice, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it more time on the mat? Maybe finally nailing that tricky arm balance? Well, what if I told you the real secret, the actual foundation of the practice, isn't on your mat at all? It's somewhere, well, somewhere you might not expect.
I mean, look at this. This idea comes straight from the classic medieval yoga manuals, and it just completely flips the script, right? It suggests that what you eat is the absolute prerequisite for everything else you do in your practice, from the physical postures all the way to your mental clarity. This is not some modern foodie yoga fusion. This is an ancient rule. So to really get our heads around this, there are two key terms we've got to know: Pathya and Apathya. Pathya is all about the foods that are wholesome, that are suitable, the things that actively support your practice. Think of it as premium fuel. And then you have Apathya. That's the stuff that's unsuitable, the foods that obstruct you or get in the way. These two ideas are basically going to be our roadmap for this whole explainer. All right, so let's jump in our time machine for a minute. We're going to take a look at what the foundational texts of Hatha Yoga actually said about food. And this wasn't just about general wellness for them. This was a direct line to achieving a stable, clear mind. Now, these dietary rules we're digging into, they come from a really specific and formative period, between the 11th and 17th centuries. This is when the big manuals, like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Gheranda Samhita, and others, were actually written down, organizing all the practices of Hatha Yoga, including, of course, what to eat. So what was on the Pathya list, the yes, please list? Well, it's actually fascinatingly simple. The texts recommended staple foods like wheat, rice, and barley. They were big fans of mung beans, milk, and ghee. You see, the whole guiding principle was that food should be sweet, pleasing, and this is the most important part, easily digestible. It had to nourish you without causing any kind of disturbance.
And what about Apathya, the stuff to avoid? Well, the texts basically warned against anything that would agitate your system. So that meant foods that were super salty, sour, or pungent were out. Stale, reheated, or really oily meals? Nope. Heavy meats and alcohol were a hard no. And, even habits like overeating or trying extreme fasts were considered Apathya because they just create instability.
And this right here, this is the crucial connection they made. The ancient yogis saw this direct domino effect. If your digestion gets disturbed, your vital energy, what they called prana, gets all erratic. And if your prana is all over the place, your mind is going to be unstable. That makes deep practice and meditation pretty much impossible. See? The kitchen and the mat are all one system.
Okay, let's hit the fast forward button a few hundred years. How does all this ancient wisdom stack up against what 21st century nutritional science is telling us? Sure, the language is different. We talk about metabolism and systemic inflammation now, but are the conclusions actually the same? Let's see. So today's version of Pathya, our modern recommended diet, well, it looks pretty darn familiar. Nutritionists today are all about whole grains for fiber, legumes for great plant-based protein, and, of course, a ton of fresh vegetables and fruits. The big focus is on whole, minimally processed foods that help keep our bodies stable and healthy. And our modern Aphapatea list, you guessed it, it's the usual suspects. Highly processed foods, way too much sugar, tons of sodium, and yep, excess alcohol. Modern science has clearly linked these things to all sorts of problems, from metabolic issues to inflammation, basically things that throw the body's balance way off. Sound familiar? Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. We're about to put these two worlds, the ancient yogic texts and modern dietetics, right next to each other. Let's build that bridge and see what happens. I mean, it seems like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it? What kind of common ground could there possibly be between a medieval ascetic living in a cave and a modern scientist with a lab coat? Well, you are about to be surprised. Okay, just look at this comparison. Let's walk through it. For grains, ancient texts said wheat and barley. Modern science says whole grains. For protein, both point to legumes and a bit of dairy. The avoid list? Yogis said no to overly salty food. We say no to processed foods loaded with sodium. And the advice on alcohol and not overeating? It's practically identical. It's an absolutely incredible parallel across centuries. Seriously, this overlap isn't just a coincidence. It is truly striking. Whether you call it disturbing your prana or you call it causing systemic inflammation, the fundamental understanding of what supports the human body and what harms it has stayed remarkably consistent.
So what does this all mean for us, right here, right now?
how can we take this ancient wisdom, which has been pretty much validated by modern science, and actually apply it to our lives? Let's build a simple, practical framework.
Here is a super simple integrated guide. On the Pathya, or eat this side, you want to focus on whole grains, lentils, and fresh veggies, and try to eat a light meal a couple of hours before you practice. On the Apathya, or avoid this side, steer clear of processed, packaged foods, really heavy fried meals, and definitely don't have a huge meal right before you hit the mat. The principles are so simple. Eat real food, don't eat too much of it, and eat it at the right time.
And at the end of the day, it all comes back to this one timeless, beautiful principle. This is a formula that has held true for hundreds of years. A calm, stable digestive system is the foundation for a calm, stable breath. And a calm, steady breath, well, that's the key that unlocks a calm, focused mind. It really does all start with what's on your plate.
So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Think about your own diet through this lens of Pathya and Apathya. What's supporting you, and what might be holding you back? Because the answer to that question could be the secret ingredient you've been searching for in your practice.